Welcome back, Curious Hearts. I'm Vera. Together, in every episode, we get to explore what it is we really believe, how we practice, and we get to meet people who are on their own spiritual path. Together, we begin. Welcome back, Curious Hearts. I'm Vera Lester. I am a spiritual pastor, I'm a meaningful work coach, and I'm a yoga teacher. And everything I do is centered around helping people discover and create meaning in their lives so that when they wake up in the morning, they know what they're doing here. And when they go to sleep at night, they feel a sense of accomplishment and deep ease. And all those words sound really cute and really like inspiring. And it's not that simple. It's not like we can just take a pill or read a book about Zen Buddhism and then magically be transformed into having a new life and to have an escape from a very real sense of dread about the world right now. And so I want to start by just acknowledging that. I want to start by acknowledging that the world is kind of hard right now. And in many ways, it's probably been hard for a long time. But many of us, I think, especially those of us who live in the United States, may not have had a direct experience of how challenging it can be to be, in the world. So today we're going to talk about the only way that I know out of the spiral that is existential dread and anxiety, and that is spiritual practice. So why am I talking about spiritual practice on this podcast? Here's my background. I've been teaching yoga for almost 15 years, and I have seen my relationship to my practice change pretty dramatically over the years. There have been practices that I have been really excited about, that I wake up in the morning and I'm like just raring to go. I have been a person who practices at 7 a.m. every morning. I have been a person who, is at the studio every night. I've had a lot of other different kinds of practices, other movement practices. I've experimented and been committed to a lot of other meditation practices, including mantra practice and chanting and singing. And over the course of these years, I have discovered the old truth that everybody will tell you, which is it doesn't matter how much you think about practice. It doesn't matter how much you read about practice. It doesn't matter how much you talk to other people about how great your practice is. If you don't do it, it doesn't work. And if anything, my hope is that this experiment, this project, this podcast, the book will remind all of us that you got to do it. We have to show up. We have to sit down. We have to roll out our mats. We have to get on our knees and do our practices, because without them, I don't want to live in a world without them. So welcome to today's episode. This is episode number 4 on spiritual practice. In January of 2014, I quit my job. And I had been working in a pretty reliable profession that I was pretty good at and relatively successful at for about 12 years. And I had grown more and more dissatisfied. I was less and less motivated to show up and do the work. I was, as a result of that, getting worse at it, which was hard for me. And I just was, I was sort of miserable. And without going too far down that road, it's just important for you to know I had a profession, I had a career, I hit a wall, and I walked away from it. I quit my job without another job. And it is one of the scariest things I have ever done. It was truly a leap of faith. And I can only say that in hindsight because I didn't know what was going to happen. At the time, I felt like a completely crazy person. I felt like I was off my rocker. And everybody who told me I was brave or that they were envious of me, I didn't trust them because I was like, I just quit my job without another job. And I knew that in many ways it was the only choice that I had at the time. So when I left that old profession, I went from having incredibly structured days, right? It's like I had to be in the office at a certain time. We had regular meetings, we had regular schedules. I had all of these things that I had to do. And so much that I was trying to like squeeze things in. And part of the things I was squeezing in at the time were my own practices, my physical practices, my meditation practices, my mantra practice, and then my teaching, which I also consider a practice. But I suddenly had all this time on my hands. And it was terrifying. Um, the first couple of weeks, I just let myself decompress. And then the anxiety started to creep in because I wasn't 100% sure what was coming next. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what the plan was because I had been steadily working the plan for the previous, decade, and it didn't work. It didn't get me where I wanted to be, which was happy and fulfilled and successful. I didn't feel like I was any of those things. So suddenly I had like the enemy of creativity in a lot of ways, which is almost no limitations. I believe that limitations and structure are necessary for really abundant creativity. And one of the most important things that I did in that year was I started practicing with a new yoga teacher. I started going to her intensive trainings, her classes every morning. We would practice Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And on the days when I had no idea what was happening or what I was doing next or how I was going to make my mortgage payment, at the very least, I knew I had done 2 hours of really difficult practice, right? I had pushed my body. I had spent time in like dedicated meditation. I learned pranayama practice that was incredibly helpful for me. And we studied the Yoga Sutras together. All of those things were a real anchor for me in that period. And that is one of the things that our spiritual practice does for us. It creates a kind of anchor when everything is turned upside down. Now, in that circumstance, for me, 10, 12 years ago, I had turned my own world upside down. I was the one who came in and flipped the table. And even though I didn't know what was going to happen next, it was me who did that. But that's not always how it goes. I have had many times since then and before then when my whole life got turned upside down, inside out. I didn't know where I was going next. I didn't know in some moments who I was or what I was doing here. Like, what is even the point of all of this human business? And those moments, too, my practices have been an anchor for me. They are a steadying force. They are like home base, Ali Ali Oxenfree, like a home base I can come back to when I'm not sure who I am. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. When I have those underlying questions, which I think all of us with deep curiosity and consciousness about the world, we all are going to get to a moment where we go like, what is happening here? I don't know what to do next. And in those moments, our spiritual practices are a lifesaver. They are sometimes as simple as coming back to the breath when we feel like we're so constricted and scared, we can't even take a full breath. It might seem small. It might seem insignificant in a moment when we understand what's happening with climate change, when we see what's happening in governments all over the world, when we're seeing perhaps the rise of like profound nationalism and even fascism in the United States and elsewhere, certainly a rise of authoritarianism in governments all over the world, what feels to some of us like a backsliding away from the freedom of democracy and empowering of people. You might feel terrified about what's happening with climate change and seeing that things are only going in a more difficult, hotter, rainier, like more flooded direction. And in fact, if we spend too much of our time going in that direction, if we spend too much of our time whirling out about like all of the shit in the world and how things are going upside down, we can't engage. And so our spiritual practices also give us enough of a lifeline, enough of an anchor, and enough of a connection back to ourselves that we can actually show up and do work in the world. And it seems sort of ironic, like paradoxical, like if I actually face the fullness, the intensity of the world, I get overwhelmed and I shut down, right? Or I get so angry and so combative that I can't actually get anything productive done with another human. Or I'm so overcome with anxiety that all I do is like spin out and like make everybody else around me, right? Really crazy. If we can take a moment to step back and really commit to some of these core practices. And I say core practices because I believe that they're common across all traditions. But if we can take a step back and commit to some of these core practices and remind ourselves some things, we'll talk about that in a second, we're then able to show up more authentically. We're able to show up in the world to do the work that we think matters the most. Maybe that means combating the changes in climate. Maybe that means showing up meaningfully in our civic world, in our cities, in our states, in our governments. It means that we can actually take action on the things that are the most important to us. But not unless we have this deep foundation of practice. So hopefully that's gotten your appetite a little whetted. And I want to talk now about what practice is, right? Like what even am I talking about? So maybe when you think about practice, one of the first things I think about in terms of spiritual practices are, things like meditation, breath work, yoga practice, prayer. I think that creative practices are deeply spiritual. But when I draw the connections, right, when I distill all of those things down into their core elements, this is what I see are the common ground in spiritual practice. One is there is an intention behind them. There's a reason, right, that we are showing up to do this thing. So in the example, right, of my morning yoga practice, my actual intention behind that was to show up and have some structure in my day. That was like my first purpose. And then there were a number of other intentions underneath that. I wanted to be present. I wanted to improve my physical asana practice. I wanted to learn from a new teacher. Maybe my goals shifted a little bit day to day, week to week, or month to month. But the core reason that I was showing up was the same. I was looking for a sense of internal peace, groundedness, and reliability. Um, the actual intention about why we show up to our practice doesn't matter, I don't think. I think that having the intention is what matters. After intention, what matters next is effort. And I think that effort is one of the things that gets in my way of practice, right? It's not easy always to make the space. It's not easy for me to set aside time in my calendar, put away my phone, to close my email and go sit and breathe for 20 minutes. And that's part of the deal. If practice were easy, it wouldn't work on us the way that it does. But showing up with intention to do something hard, even if it doesn't seem like it should be hard, like it shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be hard to sit down for 20 minutes and breathe, but it is. It shouldn't be hard to get to the yoga studio and unroll our mat and breathe and move in a beautiful space with other beautiful people, right? That sounds like something we should just naturally be motivated to do. And yet it isn't for most of us. For most of us, it requires effort. It requires planning. It requires an internal, like, I'm gonna do this now. And that internal, what we call it Icha Shakti in the yoga practice. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's like motivation, your drive, that like oomph. It doesn't matter what we call it. It is that internal motivation, that internal drive, that oomph that gets us to actually move into the work. And being able to do something that requires effort is part of what is shaping us as the practice shapes us, as the practice molds us. That effort is part of what is shaping and molding us and changing us. The next thing is duration, right? Like you can't show up. I mean, you can show up and go to a yoga class once or 3 times. You could do 4 downward dogs and then never do downward dog again. And, it might be interesting. Maybe your calves would stretch out, but you would not get the benefit of the work, right? So we have intention, we have effort, we have duration. And then finally, the thing that I think is the most important is we have commitment. And in many ways, commitment is a combination of all of these things. It is a willingness to show up day after day, even on the days that we don't want to. We said we were going to do it, and so now we're doing it. We have made a promise to ourselves, or maybe to our teacher, or maybe to our community of practitioners. And that commitment is also shaping and changing us. So how are we being changed? What does that even mean? First of all, we are in the process of doing all of those things and showing up with regularity, in doing something hard, and doing it over and over again for a long period of time with a sense of commitment to ourselves and to the practice. We are learning how to do all of those things. I am learning that I'm a person who can show up and do something even on the days I don't want to. Even on the days that I'm scared or I'm tired or where there are 1,000 other things that I have to do. I have established myself as a person who believes that I am worthy of this work, of these practices. I am worth the time and the investment and the effort and the duration and the commitment to feel more at ease, to be a little bit more myself. And so are you. Like, you are also worthy of showing up for yourself. You're worthy. You inherently deserve time to be by yourself, as yourself. Because in those moments, we are training ourselves to be in this world. And again, the irony of like having to step away from the world to do something else in order to return back to that world is, it's sort of a fascinating paradox, but I have yet to find any other way that works. There are things that work for a while. Ambition works for a while. Money works for a while. Fear works for a while. Obligation and maybe shame, the expectations of ourselves and our family, all of that stuff works for a while. And like the length of a while is a little different for some of us than others. For me, a while was about 12 years or maybe 20 if you count all of my incredibly ambitious schooling and education work and all of the things I did before that. When we can commit to ourselves, when we can commit to practice, we're committing to our humanity. We're committing to seeing ourselves as we really are, getting out from behind all of our bullshit, all of our excuses, and meeting our curious hearts, meeting the part of us that is the most pure and that is a spark of the divine, in my opinion. One of my teachers said to me years ago, probably while I was doing my teacher training, almost 15 years ago, he said, "You get good at what you show up for." Right? You get good at what you repeatedly do. Now, I don't think that the things that are my habits are my practices, because habits don't have intention behind them often. Snoozing, like I am an expert at snoozing my alarm in the morning. Is that practice? No. Is it habit? Yes. And is it shaping me? Absolutely. Does it change what I think about myself? Does it change my perspective on my day? All of those things, yes, absolutely. But often because it's unintentional. And I will tell you, a little bit of intentional practice goes an incredibly long way in rescuing us from all of the habits of denial, of self-abandonment, of avoidance, of like procrastination, all of the things that we do to escape what's right here. And sometimes that's because what's right here is hard. It's sad. It makes us angry. It brings us back to something that we would rather not look at or see. And so having the cushion of practice, having the bubble wrap of practice to meet the present moment is incredibly soothing and calming. If I had to just sit down and look at my life and look at myself and look at the world 100%, like with no wool over my eyes all the time, I don't know that I could stand it. But when I have the cushion of deep mindfulness practice, of becoming aware of my breath and my senses, something starts to change. And over time, when I'm practicing those other things, when I have my set aside time to do my practices, to do my breath work, to do my meditation, I'm getting better and better at that. And then the rest of the time, when something happens that's hard, I have the experience of just being with what is, of just showing up and breathing. And suddenly being present with what is, seeing myself as my full self, seeing my whole life, seeing the whole world as it is, not just all of the things that are scary about it or that are hard about it, but also all the things that are wonderful and miraculous, all of the things that are inspiring and funny and absurd and like ticklish. Suddenly, I'm able to engage in the world with so much more compassion for myself and for other people. And it's not exactly that I was showing up practicing compassion for myself or for other people. That's not always what our practices are, although there are some practices that are like that. But little by little, we learn to return. We learn to come back. We learn that we can face whatever comes up in this moment. Because often the stuff that comes up in our meditation practice, or in our asana practice, or in our journaling practice, or in our singing practices, or when we're gardening, or cooking, or repeating japa mantra, or prayer, or when we're at church. Often the things that come up there are the things that we are actually the most afraid of. And so practice gives us the ability to meet those things. So, what does practice do for us? It's an anchor. It's something we can come back to again and again, that is reliable, something we can count on when the world and our life feels constantly changeable, right? So practice provides a ground when everything else feels like it's shifting. Practice trains us. It makes us stronger. It helps us develop our fortitude and our commitment and our willingness to be with ourselves and to be with the world, right? It gives us a strength that few other things do. Our practice protects us. It provides a little bit of a buffer space, a little cushion between ourselves, our precious, tender selves, our curious hearts, and the intensity of the world and of our lives. And finally, practice gives us something that we can come back to. And over time, one of the greatest gifts of the practice is we realize how we're changing. We are able to see ourselves with a sense of kindness and compassion because, inhale, exhale is the same. But when over time we see our relationship to that breath, to that inhale and that exhale changing, over time when we do 1,000, 10,000, 1,000,000 downward facing dogs, when we come to prayer or to meditation every day for 100 days, we're the ones that's changing, not the practice. The practice changes us. And that is the greatest freedom that we have. Because in the end, we have only a little bit of control over the world around us. We have influence. We can move things a little bit in one direction or the other direction. And in the grand scheme of time and the universe, right? Not that much. But we have an extraordinary amount of control over how we relate to ourselves and the world. And spiritual practice is the only thing I know I can come back to reliably, consistently, and most of the time for free, that allows me to shift and change myself so that I can show up as a more full, more compassionate, braver, more curious version of myself. And so that is what I wish for you. Um, if you want to share, um, is there anything about what I said today that like maybe got under your skin in a bad way or a hard way that you're like, oof, ooh, that one stuck. Um, what I want for all of us is a life of deep spiritual presence and connection that is not Instagrammable, but that allows each of us to live bigger, deeper, more full lives. So let me know if there's something that you're like, oof, yeah, here's the thing I know I've been repeating. Here's the habit that I know I've been getting really good at lately. Just let me know. Share it in the comments. Shoot me an email. In the meantime, this episode is likely going to come out on the 4th of July, on Independence Day. And in the spirit of that Independence Day, I hope that you are allowed to feel a little freer from the things that have limited you in the past. I hope you feel a little more open, a little more spacious in your life. And I hope to see you next time. Take great care, curious hearts, and be well.